As investigators expanded their search, they began interviewing residents along Maria's route home. Most people cooperated normally, answering questions without hesitation. But one house stood out not because of what was said, but because of how controlled and minimal the responses were. A quiet presence lived there, someone neighbors rarely saw but often felt watching from a distance. The man living there was in his late 30s, unmarried, and mostly kept to himself. Neighbors described him as strange but harmless. He rarely interacted with anyone. Yet several people recalled seeing him outside late at night, sitting still for long periods. He never seemed to be doing anything, just observing, watching who came and went on the street without moving much at all. When police questioned him, his behavior was unsettlingly calm. No panic, no confusion. He answered every question directly but briefly, as if carefully choosing every word. He claimed he saw nothing unusual that night. No screams, no footsteps, nothing. But his lack of emotion felt rehearsed, like someone who had already imagined this conversation long before it happened. There was no evidence to arrest him, but investigators couldn't ignore the unease he left behind. Something about him didn't fit. It wasn't proof. It was instinct. The feeling that sometimes the quietest people are the ones hiding the most. And as they left his house, one thought lingered heavily in their minds. What if they had just spoken to the last person who saw Maria alive?
Days into the investigation, officers rechecked surveillance footage from nearby homes. Most of it had already been reviewed, but one camera had been overlooked due to its angle and poor quality. It was small, privately owned, and pointed toward a narrow stretch of road just beyond Maria's usual walking path. The footage was grainy, but investigators decided to examine it anyway. At exactly 10:57 p.m., Maria appeared on screen. She was walking faster than before, her posture slightly tense. Her head turned once, briefly, as if she had sensed something behind her. The street was dimly lit, shadows stretching across the pavement. Everything seemed normal at first glance, but her body language told a different story, subtle fear growing with every step. Seconds later, another figure entered the frame, tall, dark, moving steadily behind her. Not rushing, not hesitating, just following. The distance between them slowly decreased. Maria did not run, but her pace increased slightly. The tension in the footage was silent, but heavy, as if the air itself had changed the moment that second figure appeared behind her. Then suddenly, both figures moved out of the camera's view. No struggle was visible from that angle. No clear interaction. Just a moment where Maria walked forward, and the shadow followed her out of frame. A few seconds later, nothing returned. The street was empty again. The footage continued recording, but the story it captured had already ended. Police obtained a search warrant and returned to the suspect's home. The atmosphere inside felt unusually still, almost staged. Everything was clean, organized, and quiet. At first glance, nothing seemed suspicious, but experienced investigators knew that people rarely hide things in obvious places. They began searching deeper, checking rooms, drawers, and hidden spaces carefully. In a back room, they found clothing matching the figure from the footage. Dark fabric, recently washed but not completely clean. Nearby were shoes with dirt still embedded in the soles. Everything suggested recent outdoor activity. Nothing confirmed guilt yet, but every item increased suspicion. It was as if pieces of a puzzle were slowly being placed together. Inside a drawer, they discovered a small recording device. It contained multiple audio files. When played, the room became completely silent. The first sounds were faint breathing, uneven and close. Then, footsteps. Then, a shift in tone that matched Maria's final recording. The discovery sent a wave of unease through the room because the timing of the files aligned too perfectly. The investigators exchanged glances but said nothing. The evidence wasn't complete yet, but it was growing stronger by the minute. What they were uncovering was no longer just a disappearance. It was a pattern. It a sequence of events that suggested planning, timing, and control. And every new discovery pointed toward one unsettling truth. Someone had been prepared for that night. The suspect was taken into formal questioning. For hours, he remained silent, sitting calmly as investigators observed him. No fear, no visible stress, just patience. It was as if he was waiting for the right moment. Finally, he began to speak, his voice steady and controlled, describing events with an unsettling level of detail. He admitted he had been watching Maria for weeks, learning her schedule, observing her patterns, knowing exactly when she would leave school and which route she always took. He described the night with precision, including exact timing and movement. Every detail he shared made it clear that Maria had been targeted long before she ever realized it. He said he followed her that night from a distance, staying hidden in the shadows. He described the moment she slowed down, as if sensing something behind her. She looked back, he said quietly, but it didn't matter. His tone never changed. No regret, no emotion. Just a cold recollection of events that had already been decided in his mind. But despite the confession, investigators noticed something missing. He never explained where she went afterward, never confirmed what happened in those final minutes. It felt incomplete, deliberate, as if he was choosing what to reveal and what to keep hidden. And that unanswered gap became the most terrifying part of all. Search operations expanded beyond the city. Forests, abandoned buildings, empty fields, every possible location was covered. Teams worked tirelessly, hoping for even the smallest clue. But each search ended the same way. Nothing. No trace, no confirmation. Just silence stretching further each day, making the case harder to solve and even harder to accept. Maria's family continued waiting. Every phone call brought hope, followed by disappointment. Every passing day made the situation heavier. Her mother refused to believe she was gone, holding on to the idea that Maria might still be found. But investigators knew the longer the search continued without results, the more difficult the outcome would become. Inside the investigation team, frustration grew. They had confession, footage, and evidence, but still no location. It was as if the final piece of the story had been erased. The case was becoming less about finding answers and more about understanding why those answers were being hidden. And that uncertainty made everything more unsettling. Then a new tip came in from an anonymous source, a location outside the city limits. Remote, quiet, unused. Investigators didn't hesitate. They prepared immediately, knowing that this could either be nothing or the breakthrough they had been waiting for since the beginning. The search team arrived at a remote location far from the city. The area was quiet, surrounded by open land and trees. It was isolated enough that no one would notice anything unusual happening there. Officers began a systematic search, scanning the ground carefully, following standard procedure, while tension built quietly among them. After some time, they noticed disturbed soil in one specific area. It didn't match the natural environment. The team immediately began excavation. The process was slow and tense, each layer of soil revealing nothing at first. But eventually, the atmosphere shifted. The officers paused, realizing they were approaching something they didn't want to confirm. Silence filled the site. No one spoke as they continued digging. Every movement felt heavier than the last. The emotional weight of the situation was clear on every face. This was no longer just an investigation. It was the moment they had been preparing for, whether they wanted it or not. When the discovery was finally made, everything stopped. The search was over. The outcome was confirmed. No celebration, no relief, just silence. Because sometimes, finding the truth doesn't bring peace. It brings acceptance of something irreversible. Maria's disappearance became a case that deeply affected the entire community. What began as a simple walk home turned into a story of fear, uncertainty, and unanswered questions. People who followed the case never forgot it, because it reminded them how quickly normal moments can turn into something unexplainable. For her family, life never returned to normal. Every memory of Maria became heavier with time. Her last message remained frozen in their minds, unchanged. "I'm on my way home." A simple sentence that carried a tragic weight they would carry forever. The investigation officially closed, but emotional closure never truly came. There were answers, but not peace. And in stories like this, that is often the hardest truth to accept, because some mysteries end on paper, but continue living in memory. And somewhere in the quiet that followed, Maria's story remained, not as an ending, but as a reminder that sometimes the most ordinary nights can hide the most unforgettable tragedies, and some silence never fully fades.